Thank you for joining us today. I'm Pastor Paul of Faith Baptist Church, and we trust the message you're about to hear will encourage you about who God is, who you are, and how to include faith in your life today.
Well, join me this morning in Joshua chapter number 24. Joshua chapter number 24 as we continue Masculinity Month. As we started last week and we talked about the need to help understand what masculinity is biblically. There's certainly many a wrong caricature or example out there that people follow, and we think, oh, that's what being a man is. That's what being a man is all about. And something either your dad did or didn't example, something your uncle that you idolized was like, some TV character or some book character you read. It's so easy for us because we're inundated with constant messages through media and people to get a wrong characterization, a wrong example, a wrong eyesight on what masculinity is. And so we devoted all of June on Sunday mornings to talk about biblical masculinity. And so Masculinity Month continues. Last week, we looked at Genesis 1 through 3, and in an overarching way saw that spirituality is for men. We tried to hammer home the point that in our culture right now, God, the Bible, spirituality, or relationship, those are all looked at as woman stuff. Those are all looked at as weak. You need that as a crutch. You're pathetic as a man if you want to have any kind of faith about you. And we said, oh no, a biblical man, true masculinity understands he was created body, soul, and spirit. He's created in the image of God. He's designed to have a relationship with God. And so, true masculinity values and treasures a relationship with God. And they find that through salvation in Jesus Christ, and they grow in their fellowship therein. But today we want to look at Joshua chapter number 24, and we want to look at this subject matter from Joshua 24. The best choice that matters the most. Last week we learned spirituality is for men. This week we're learning about the best choice that matters the most. The best choice that matters the most. To kind of help us see some choices that maybe seem like good choices at the time, but now time has revealed them not to be good choices. We asked you last week to send in some photos of some of your family members in years gone by so we could have frankly, a good laugh at them to help us with Joshua chapter 24. And so, here's Brother Jerry, and thankfully he went into a different field before he went into his boxing career. It's probably better for you, huh, Brother Jerry? So we're glad for that. Here's Caleb. He went from being a hardcore dirt bike rider and pursuing that professionally. Now he's an accountant, so the pendulum swang all the way the other way. Probably a good choice, better than your Tom Cruise Maverick look there, that's for sure. Here's Brother Nate doing his best Marky Mark and the Funky Bunch impersonation there, and so he's got a sweet hat and nice bright colors, looking good. This is me, when I had hair. Yeah, where's Twinkie at? Where you at, Brother Scott? Brother Scott has always asked, why did people call me Punchy growing up? This is the Hawaiian punch hair picture. People called me Punchy growing up. Not a great choice, right? Here's Brother Ellis rocking a mustache and a sweet plaid, or I don't know what we'd call that. It's not quite plaid. I don't know what that sweater is, but he's rocking that there, doing well with it. Here's, who is this? Anybody have a guess? Brother Jason, one of our trustees there, Brother Jason doing his best Italian gangster or mobster look with his skinny tie, before it's popular even. Congratulations. Here's Brother Scott showing off well in his Fiero and his, he didn't have hair then either, it looks like, though. So Brother Scott, we traded places there for sure. About to go pick up his sweetheart and his sweet Fiero. How many had a Fiero growing up? Anybody? It's an 80s car gone by, right? And then lastly, we have Brother Rob helping us with business in the front, party in the back with the mullet. Looking great, breaking the girls' hearts. Right, Brother Rob? We appreciate that. And so you may say, what in the world do those photos have anything to do with Joshua chapter number 24? Well, the photos are a great reminder to us that sometimes choices are good in a certain space of time. Like you made a choice. It seemed like it was a good choice at the time. You thought it was going to be a good choice, but given enough time, those decisions seem less than great. I was hoping somebody would submit some bell-bottoms and afro pictures just to show some decisions at the time seemed great, but over time they are less than great. Sometimes choices change because of cultural taste. Fads come and go, and so choices that were once thought to be a decent choice don't become a good choice just because of cultural taste. Some choices that seem to be okay lose acceptance in a culture due to morality shifts or understandings about righteousness. And so some choices seem good and seem bad and really are. It can be due to our own personal maturing that choices we thought were okay, we realize were not good at the time later. And so choices made that we thought were important or should be prioritized or should be valuable, sometimes later on we find they're not. Everybody with me? Two of us, good. Everybody with me? Sometimes choices we made, and we thought, boy, that was a good choice. Boy, that was a valuable choice. That is a choice I had to prioritize high on the list. And so we made a choice about ourselves, about someone else, about our finances, about our look, about a major life decision. We thought, this is a good choice. Sometimes later on we realize that was not a good choice. Whatever the reason, a choice we once thought was the best choice can find itself ranging from unimportant all the way to the other side of the pendulum at regrettable. Everybody with me still? Choices we made that we thought were good or important due to cultural acceptance, whether it was acceptance of our nature because of it's something we thought was good because of our own immaturity. Sometimes choices that we made, that we thought were valuable, that we thought were important, can find themselves ranging down to unimportant all the way to regrettable. So as we continue Masculinity Month, we want to navigate the difficult task of determining what the best choices are, not only for today, but that which will last beyond us. Where the choices that we make now will still be good choices in 30 years. The choices that we make now will still be the best choices when we're not around anymore. That the impact and the lasting result of those choices will still show they were the best choice. And so, gentlemen, I want to talk to you this morning about the best choice that matters the most. The best choice that matters the most. Ladies, if you're in here and you're single, whether it's due to unmarried, whether it's due to divorce or widow, let me encourage you this morning, when you are in search for a man, look for a man that looks for the best choice that matters the most. Ladies, help your husbands with the best choice that matters the most. Moms and dads, help your sons with the best choice that matters the most. Well, what is this best choice? Well, I'm glad you asked. Look at Joshua 24 in verse number 14 and 15. Familiar portion of Scripture. Joshua, in verses 1 through 13, has recounted the nation of Israel's history. And so he has told them what God has talked to them about in their covenant relationship. And in verse 14, now look what he says. Now therefore, fear the Lord and serve him in sincerity and in truth, and put away the gods which your fathers served on the other side of the flood and in Egypt, and serve ye the Lord. And if it seem evil unto you to serve the Lord, choose you this day whom ye will serve, whether the gods which your fathers served that were on the other side of the flood, or the gods of the Amorites in whose land ye dwell. Note Joshua, the best choice that matters the most. But you can do what you want to do. You can do how you think is best to do. But I'm going to tell you what I'm going to do. And here's what he says, the famous phrase. But as for me and my house, we will serve the Lord. Let's all repeat the last phrase together. We all know it, no doubt. But as for me and my house, we will serve the Lord. The best choice that matters the most. The best choice that matters the most. See, Joshua states that the proper response to God's gracious dealings with them as a nation was to forsake all else and follow him. And gentlemen, I want you to understand today that God's care and character provide you the basis to make the right choices about who to serve. God's care and character provide you and I the right basis to make the right choices about who we will serve. Note how this chapter opens up in verse 1. And Joshua gathered all the tribes of Israel to Shechem, and called for the elders of Israel, and for their heads, and for their judges, and for their officers, and they presented themselves before God. And Joshua said unto all the people, Thus saith the Lord God of Israel, Your fathers dwelt on the other side of the flood in old time, even Terah, the father of Abraham, and the father of Nahor, and they served other gods. And I," this is God speaking, "took your father, Abraham, from the other side of the flood, and led him throughout all the land of Canaan, and multiplied his seed, and gave him Isaac. And I gave unto Isaac Jacob, and Esau, and I gave unto Esau Mount Seir to possess it. But Jacob and his children went down into Egypt. And I sent Moses also and Aaron," this is 400 plus years later, "and I plagued Egypt, according to that which I did among them. And afterwards I brought you out, and I brought your fathers out of Egypt. And ye came unto the sea, and the Egyptians pursued after your fathers with chariots and horsemen unto the Red Sea. And when they cried unto the Lord, he put darkness between you and the Egyptians, and brought the sea upon them, and covered them. And your eyes have seen what I have done in Egypt. And ye dwelt in the wilderness a long season, and I brought you into the land of the Amorites, which dwelt on the other side of Jordan. And they fought with you, and I gave them into your hand, that ye might possess their land. And I destroyed them from before you. Then Balak, the son of Zippor, king of Moab, arose and warred against Israel, and sent and called Balaam, the son of Beor, to curse you. But I would not hearken unto Balaam. Therefore he blessed you still. So I delivered you out of his hand. And you went over Jordan and came unto Jericho, and the men of Jericho fought against you, the Amorites, and the Perizzites, and the Canaanites, and the Hittites, and the Girgashites, and the Hivites, and the Jebusites. And I delivered them into your hand. Is everybody getting the message from God to his covenant people? I delivered you. And here he says, I have given you a land. Here, verse 12. I sent the hornets before you, which drave them out from before you, even the 2 kings of the Amorites, but not with thy sword, nor with thy bow. And I have given you a land for which ye did not labor, and cities which ye built not, and ye dwell in them. Of the vineyards and olives which ye planted not, do you eat. Is everybody getting the picture here? Joshua rehearses from God's lips what he has done for them. So, to remind us of that, we will recount the books of Genesis through Joshua in the next 5 minutes. Do you think I can do it? Genesis through Joshua. Buckle up, we'll try it. Verse 1 through 12 recounts Israel's entire history as a nation up to this point and major events. That history begins with God graciously calling out Abraham, or Abram at the time, from dead paganism in Genesis chapter number 12. He moves Abram to a fertile and a blessed land. He establishes a covenant with him to bless the nations of the earth. He will give him an heir to birth a nation, to show that there is a creator God in heaven who knows men's actions, who cares for men, and desires to have a relationship with them. This people, Israel, would be his people. He performed the impossible by giving Abram an heir at an impossible time of life. He and Sarah are old. They cannot conceive. They cannot have children. But that does not stop the Almighty God from carrying out his plan. What does he do? He gives him a son in his old age. He gives him Isaac. God's provision continued with the next generation. It didn't just stop at Abraham. It goes on to Isaac and his sons, Esau and Jacob. And though men would oppose them, we still find them blessed over and over and over again. Jacob then has 12 sons, which become the well-known 12 tribes of Israel. And so a predominant story emerges about God's faithfulness despite men's prejudices, and we see that in the person Joseph. God takes Joseph and raises him all the way up to second in command of the mightiest human government on the face of the earth at that time. And God uses him to provide a respite for his father and brethren from the famine that was in their land. And so they go down into Egypt to dwell with their long-lost brother, who is now rich and affluent in a pagan country. And that's just the book of Genesis. You go on from there. Exodus opens up some 400 years later. They've grown in numbers. They're now viewed as a threat to the leadership of Egypt. They counteract this perceived prowess of Israel by enslaving the entire race there, the entire tribes of Israel. And after years of brutality because of the slavery, because of the conditions being awful, they cry out to God for deliverance. And what does God do? He sends Moses and he sends Aaron. And they go to Pharaoh as God's spokespeople. And they tell Pharaoh what God desires him to do for his people. Just let them go. It's a simple command, isn't it? It's not complicated. Let them go. But we know the story, do we not? Pharaoh in his arrogance rebuffs the gracious invitation of God. Pharaoh in his arrogance puts his people in a position as a nation, as individuals, to suffer financially, physically, nationally, mentally, emotionally, and relationally. And I want us to realize that the judgments that fell upon Egypt due to Pharaoh's rebellion were not undeserved. And after being devastated nationally, being devastated even personally, Pharaoh finally acquiesces and Israel walks out, do they not? They even bestow upon them all that they can, all their efforts and all their goods to help Israel get out. And so they begin their journey and they leave lavishly to the promised land. And yet Pharaoh's humility is short-lived. He realizes he's let his entire workforce go. So what does he do? He sends his armies back after them. I want you to reclaim and recapture what is rightfully mine. And so they find themselves up against the Red Sea with nowhere to go and an army breathing down upon them. They have no military experience necessarily. And God does the miraculous and impossible and opens up the Red Sea, and 1 million plus people go through. And then as an army approaches and gets down in there, what does he do? Closes it back over them. And there is not one person to pursue after them. They could not make that journey. And so here it is. God has cared for Abraham and now his descendants as he promised again and again and again and again. God manifests his presence with his people through visible means the entire time. He goes as a cloud by day and a pillar of fire by night. And he calls Moses up to the mountain area to give him revelation that would guide them as they were under his rule, God's rule, as a theocracy. And one would think, based on how awesome and terrifying their God has been with Israel and with Egypt, you would think they would show themselves faithful, wouldn't you? You would think that would be an insulating barrier against idolatry, and yet we know it was not. They indulge in idolatry, and they suffer because of it. And yet God, even though he chastises them, is still gracious to them. As they journey throughout the wilderness, where do they get their food from? Kroger? Nope. Where do they get their food from? They just stopped at the local Costco, packed up on, I don't know how many packs of water you need for 1 to 2 million people, but it'd be a lot. No. God supernaturally and miraculously provides for them again and again and again. Frankly, it is unbelievable how good God is to the nation of Israel as they travel throughout the desert. And yet, what do? They complain against God, and they turn their anger against Moses. And as a result, they're judged by their God. They'll roam the desert until the generation of doubters have passed off the scene. So now it brings us up to speed to where we're at. Here Joshua with the new generation has entered into the promised land, and they've conquered the unconquerable. They've gone against Jericho, they've gone against Ai, they've gone against united kings and their armies, and God again has done the impossible. He dried up the Jordan so they could go through. He had massive walls collapse. He had daylight extended for a battle. No force against them could overcome, and yet we find God caring for them throughout this entire time again and again and again. Why do we go through all that? Because it's important for us to know the backdrop that Joshua is speaking against, the backdrop that's behind him, the backdrop that he is putting his words against or on. And he is telling the nation, don't forget who your God is. Don't forget what your God has done. Don't forget what your God is like. And so God has reminded them, I did this for you. I have done this for you. I love you. I have provided for you. I have cared for you. I have always been faithful to you. You have everything you don't ever could have possibly deserved because of me. And that's where Joshua's famous lines come in. Fear the Lord, serve Him, better make your choice. Whatever choice you make sure it's the best choice that will matter the most. So, all that background to give us 6 quick points. 6, yes. First point is this, my friend. You are making a choice. Oh, Pastor, I hear all that, but Joshua says, as for me and my house, we will serve the Lord. I want you to recognize, you today, man, you today, sir, you today, husband, you today, father, you today, young adult, you men, you young men, you older men, you are making a choice. See, we live in a culture and a time frame where human nature wants to act as if everybody else is responsible for our decisions, but that's not the case. We want to act like other people are making our choices for us as if it's passivity. We want to act like others are making our choices and we're just having to react to them. We want to act like our choices don't matter, like we can just live unintentionally. And that is not the case. Joshua gives us some straight talk. He says, you choose and I'm choosing, but he's making it clear, everybody's choosing. Oh yeah, that's right. You better figure it out. Everybody's choosing. Men, do not act as if, well, I just didn't have nothing to do with that, or I didn't. No, you made a choice. Everybody is choosing. Nobody is not choosing. As bad as the grammar is, it's a true statement. Everyone is making a choice. Joshua gives them a straight talk imperative. Choose you. You are making a choice. You better recognize what choice you are making. Fear the Lord. Serve Him in sincerity and truth. Put away the gods. Make a clear stand for the God that loves you. So I want you to understand something. You are making a choice. Joshua says, as for me. He didn't blame anybody else. He said, as for who? Me. Every man, get it clear. You are making a choice. Point number 2. Told you they'd go fast, right? Point number 2. Your choices set the course for your entire family. Your choices set the course for your entire family. Note who Joshua included in his statement in verse number 15 at the end. But as for me and nobody else, because you know what? They just do their own thing. My wife does her thing. The kids do their thing. And hey, I got nothing to do with that. Nope. As for me and who? My house. Gentlemen, may we be reminded you are making a choice, and your choices set the course for your family. Joshua not only makes a personal declaration, but commits himself to stewarding his family. I'm going to say this, gentlemen. Joshua didn't say it was on his wife to do. Joshua didn't say, it's on my wife to get this family to serve the Lord. Joshua didn't say, well, they're going to have to rely upon Moses' legacy or example to be enough for his kids. Everybody with me? You know what Joshua didn't say? He didn't point to the priesthood and expect them to make his kids turn out right. He didn't say, watch those Levites. Hey, priest, these better do right. You better train them. I'm going to bring them by once a week. I want you to talk to them. All right? Yeah, I'm holding you accountable for these kids turning out. He didn't do that. He said, as for me and my house, we will serve the Lord. We. Not yes in French. We, as in together, plurally. We will serve the Lord. You know what he was committing to? He was going to be the one who leads them. Gentlemen, biblical decisions shouldn't be up for discussion or negotiation in your household. Biblical decisions shouldn't be up to negotiations or discussion. They are not subject to feelings or circumstance. It shouldn't be dependent on your wife or children's lead. As for me and my house, we will serve the Lord. You are making a choice, and those choices set the course for your family. far too many homes are dictated about biblical and spiritual decisions by committee, emotions, or circumstance. Let me give you just a real quick insight. You know how much option my wife had in coming to church today? This much. Well, you're a horrible person. You better believe it. You know how many choices my kids got and how much say they had about church today? Well, Dad, I'm just not feeling it today, Dad. I think I'd rather just have a, kind of a lazy morning, Dad. Would you just let us have a lazy? All right, sweetie, stay home with the kids. They just don't want to go to, they don't like listening to sister so-and-so teach their class. Oh, you know what? I just stay home today. Oh, they heard that bus kid's going to be in their class. You know what, sweetie, just stay home today. No. They're here by their choice, but led by my choice, which is what? We're going to assemble with Christ's bride. Period. You know what I felt like this morning when I woke up sneezing my full head off with allergies? I don't want to go to church. At 1:30 a.m., I don't want to come to church today. But as for me and my house, we will what? Serve the Lord. Gentlemen, the choices you make set the course not only for yourself, but for your family. Number 3, your choices will reveal who or what you treasure. Your choices will reveal who or what you treasure. Note what Joshua says here. As for me, I'm making a choice. And my house, I'm setting the course for my home. We will, note the word, conveniently when it comes to us, when we feel like it, when it benefits us, do something for God. We will serve the Lord. Joshua's word choice to Israel about himself carries a strong connotation. The word serve here in the Hebrew means to be toiling, to be laboring. If you've ever toiled or labored, you know it's not always convenient, it's not always desirable, it's not always easy, but you do it because of the task at hand, because of its worth, because of its necessity. And so Joshua says, I will serve, I will toil, I will labor, I will obey the commands of my holy God. Why would he do that? Because he thought his God was valuable. He treasured who his God is and what he had said, and so he's going to serve not himself, serve not somebody else, serve ultimately. The overarching umbrella will be serve the Lord, the great I am, the one who had delivered them, the one who had been gracious, the one who had been kind. Joshua is at his disposal. No matter what he says, no matter what kind of care he provides, no matter who he is to him and his perceptions, he's going to serve him, and that shows who he treasures. Joshua is stating, I'm going to give my energies, hours, monies, thoughts, whatever it is, it's God's. It's at his disposal. I'm at his beck and call. So my friend, may we understand you are making a choice. Those choices set the course for your family. Number 3, your choices will reveal who you treasure. But number 4 this morning, God's character and care in the past should be and can be the basis for choosing to serve him with your future. His care and character in your past are the basis that you can rely upon to choose to serve him in the future. What did Joshua do? Joshua rehearsed all that God had done for Israel. God had said, I did this, I did that, and it was recorded for them. Why? Because as sinners, we got some short memories, don't we? Sometimes I can't even remember what I had for breakfast. I'm 32. It kind of concerns me. If I can forget breakfast, it shows I'm easily prone to forget other things. And we sometimes are hard on the Old Testament people, and I think maybe rightfully so in some ways. They saw the Red Sea parted. How would you ever forget that? It's not that you forget it as much as you don't let it drive you or direct you or value it or treasure it. God did the impossible on their behalf. And Christians, sometimes, we neglect or don't think about in the reality what God has done to shift your eternity away from damnation you deserved to eternity that you could never merit or earn. That was a miracle. That was unbelievable. That was an impossible task. He didn't just free you from eternal condemnation and damnation. He freed you from the power of sin presently and has retrofitted you to be able to serve him for eternal purposes and his glory now. Sometimes it's easy to forget that. So what do we have to do? We have to held back and be reminded God's care and God's character in the past. Oh yes, I will make this decision in the present for me and my house to serve the Lord. It's not convenient. It may not even be palatable to my sin nature, but I'm going to do it. Why? Because I know who my God is. I know what He's desirous of. I know what He's worthy of. And so I'm going to make this choice now, the best choice that matters the most, to serve the Lord now. And I can trust Him with the uncertainty of the future. I can trust Him with what I don't know what will come because of making this decision now. I can do that because He's always been the same in the past. His care and His character have been consistent in the past. So Joshua said, I will serve the Lord. Number 5, let God be the one that guides your choices. See, this is not incumbent upon you and I to try to helpfully figure out how we can serve the Lord, how we can make the best choice that matters the most. He gives us prescriptions for how to do so. Look at verse 14, what Joshua says. Now, therefore, if God has been good to you and God has cared for you, are you going to make this decision? I want you to understand something here. Fear the Lord, reverence Him, honor Him, give Him awe, give Him the rightful place in your heart He deserves, and serve Him in sincerity and in truth, and put away the gods which your fathers served on the other side of the flood, and serve ye the Lord. Joshua employed his free will to choose to serve the Lord. By default, him choosing to serve the Lord means he had to align himself with what that God had said. If he says, I'm going to serve the Lord, then he has to submit and let God be the one that guides his decision. Joshua didn't have the right to say, as for me and my house, we'll serve the Lord, and then go about it by his own judgment or his own dictations or his own estimations. It's for him to serve the Lord. Him to let God be the one who dictates the kind of choices, the kind of decisions, the kind of priorities, the kind of values he should have. Do you realize that if he had turned it the other way and he had said, I'm going to serve the Lord by my own estimations, I'm going to serve you, God, but I'll let my kids kind of do this even though God had said not to do that, I'll kind of do that even though God had said not to, that's just idolatry. See, when you have a God that you do stuff for you, or winks and nods at everything and never has to correct you, that's not the God of the Bible. That's an idol. When your God lets you do whatever you want, that's idolatry. When you only are the recipient and one who benefits at your own dictation, your own desire, and your own decree, that is idolatry. See, Joshua's not signing up for idolatry. Joshua's signing up for a pure religion, a pure walk with God, a pure relationship. He said, I will serve the Lord. And so he had to put anything away that would challenge that authority of God. He said to them, why don't you put away those idols, the things that would draw you away from being available to God's desire or God's disposal. You need to put it away. You need to shun it. You need to abandon it. You need to neglect it. You need to get it as far out of your life and not give an entrance into your life and shut it off, whatever it is, whoever it is, because you're to serve the Lord with sincerity and truth. It should be habitual, grounded, and authentic in your life. My friend, you're going to make a choice. Let God be the one that guides your choice. And so lastly this morning, enjoy the journey of faith and the certainty of your destination. Joshua says, as for me and my house, we will serve the Lord. Joshua's decision would be blessed and be an enjoyable one. It doesn't mean it'd be easy, but it would be blessed. It would be enjoyable because he, by saying, I will serve the Lord, is agreeing to align with his God. All that God was going to lay down for the theocracy, all that God was going to demand and expect and require him as a leader in his theocracy, he was going to say, you know, God, I'm not going to be over here as a maverick. I'm going to come right under here and align with what you have said and your standards and your desires and your estimations and your judgments. I'm going to align with you. And when anybody will do that, you know what there is? Blessing. Because God's economies know what's best. When God talks about things like forgive, He knows it's best to forgive and not harbor bitterness. So when we align with Him, what do we automatically have? The enjoyment of aligning with our God and His economies on a matter. Joshua is saying, it doesn't matter how foreign or undesirable it may be, I'm going to align with my God. And so, when you will make the best choice that matters the most, to serve the Lord, to let Him be the Lord of your life. My friend, it doesn't mean it'll be an easy life. Doesn't even mean in man's eyes it will be a rewarding life in man's eyes, but it will be an enjoyable life, and you will have the assurance of the certainty of your destination, knowing that God's promises are good for the present, but they're good for the future. You operate on God's word, you have not only for your own salvation an assurance and a surety because of who He is and what He's done on your behalf and your faith in Him, but when you operate on His word and express faith on His word, making faith-based decisions, I will make the best choice that matters the most. I'll make Bible-based, faith-based, Christian decisions. My friend, the destinations of those decisions, God will not disappoint in. Why? Because you're making His decisions. You're letting Him be God. Joshua didn't say, as for me and my house, I'll get what I want, how I want, when I want, or I'll just ignore God and abandon Him. He said, we will. Will. What about if this happens, Joshua? We will. What if you don't feel like it, Joshua? We will. What if the people don't like you as a leader, Joshua? We will. What if you get taken captive, Joshua? We will. What if you're impoverished? We will. What if things don't go the way you'd hope they would go? We will. What if you feel like God abandoned you? We will serve the Lord. He said, Israel, you've got a choice to make. Individually and then corporately as a nation. Here's who your God is. Here's what He's done on your behalf. Here is who He is willing to be now and in the future and how He wants to use you for His honor and His glory amongst the heathen to draw them to their God, draw them to their Creator. Better choose. You go back to dumb idolatry or have a good relationship with your Creator and with your King. Today, my friend, it's no different. Are we Jewish individuals? I doubt many of us in here are. Are we under the Old Testament law, theocracy? No, we're not. But my friend, the principle of this passage remains the same. Every man in this room needs to make the best choice that matters the most. At every junction point where thou be tested, make the best choice that will matter the most. Will you serve the Lord in that moment? With that decision, line up with what His Word has said, or will you not? Make the best choice that matters the most. Hey, some of those funny pictures earlier, some of those choices are a little embarrassing now. Some may be a little regrettable now. Some may not seem very important anymore now. This decision will never be that way. You make the best choice that will matter the most. God will always be caring because it's based on His character. And He will always honor what He is committed to do and will do in your life. And it will certainly be an enjoyable life with Him and with those He's put around you, which you're able to work and be an investment in their life for His purposes. And He will work in your life, and you will have a great assurance about what He's doing and what He is going to do in the future. But my friend, I just want to stress that doesn't happen when you're still halting between two opinions like Israel was back and forth on. You need to put it away or go into it. Either serve the Lord, how good He's been to you and how caring He's been to you, or turn your back on Him, but understand there's no middle ground. There's no middle of the road. There's no Sunday we serve the Lord and then Monday you do as you please. That's not Christianity. That wouldn't have been accurate for their relationship under that dispensation either. My friend, today, you and I have the opportunity as men to make the best choice that matters the most. Gentlemen, I don't know where you're at today, but you may need to make some changes about your choices. You might need to make some choices about the way you're leading in your family. If your wife's the one who's having to make all the spiritual or biblical decisions, you better start making the best choice that matters the most and lead. If your children don't know that they could come to you about anything to do with God or spirituality, you better make the best choice that matters the most and lead. If the times you darken the church doors is when things are going sour on you, you better make the best choice that matters the most and identify and be faithful in Christ's church, using your gifts for the gospel. if you have lost people that God has put around you and He is stirring your heart, and you know that neighbor, you know that aunt, you know that cubicle dweller next to you is not a Christian. They do not know the good news about Jesus Christ. Make the best choice that matters the most and serve the Lord. Whatever He says, it's ours to be, ours to do, ours to yield to, ours to surrender, ours to submit unto. It is ours to do, to be a part of it, ours to let His grace accomplish. But it all starts with you making the best choice that matters the most. Today, gentlemen, examine what's making your decisions. Don't think you're not. Don't think it's not affecting anybody else. Don't think you can waffle, go back and forth. No, my friend, today, make the best choice that will matter the most. That is what biblical masculinity does. Let's pray.
Thank you for joining us today. We trust the message you just heard encouraged you. If you'd like more information about our church, please visit fbc-beavercreek.org. Be sure to include Faith in Your Life today.